Hello, welcome to my channel. If you have been here before, thank you so much for rejoining. You are at the Bianca Williams podcast. I'm your host, Bianca. If you are new here, welcome. Stay for a while, subscribe, share your feedback. I want all of the above because this knowledge is amazing, right? We sharing self-growth tips. We have some wonderful guests sharing their stories, sharing their wisdom, sharing their breakthroughs. And you guys are in for a treat today because you guys have my sister from way back, my sister from Atlanta, Curnesia. I am so excited to have her on today. She is a mom, a wife, an entrepreneur, multi-entrepreneur at that. And so let's just pause for a minute and just say welcome. Curnesia, please share some of what's going on with you, what's coming up for you, for the people.
Thank you so much, Miss Bianca. I appreciate you. Like you said, I am Curnesia Bogans. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, as well as a solo private practice owner of C. Bogans LLC. I am also the founder and owner of In Session Candles. I also serve in higher education as a personal support counselor at a medical school here in the Atlanta area. And I am very excited to share and to hear and to talk about some things on this lovely podcast today.
Oh, thank you. And I'm really excited for what we're going to be getting into today because I feel like a lot of people can relate to this, or even if this isn't where you are right now, you definitely have either been here, it's going to happen at some point, most likely, or you know somebody who has been here. And so getting into workplace trauma, just taking care of yourself, reshaping your identity, really connecting with who you are. And so this is kind of a first time we're talking about this in this way. So thank you so much for being our expert and being able to bring that to our channel. So where I would love to start is if you could please, Miss Curnesia, tell us how you would define just work trauma and what are some common signs if someone is experiencing that.
Okay, so I believe that workplace trauma is defined as an emotional, mental, and or physical disturbance to your well-being. Whether that, like I said, be physical, emotional, intellectual, it is a disturbance to your well-being in the workplace. And I think so many times we really don't connect with it unless it's a visible, tangible experience. But those invisible things like emotionality, like mental well-being are things that we sort of normalize. But the short answer is a disturbance within one or more of those areas. And some things,
Yes.
what was the second part of your question? There's some things
How
I
can
didn't.
you recognize, how can somebody recognize if they're experiencing that, or what are some common signs that someone may be experiencing workplace trauma?
It can come with a change in attitude. It can come with a change in connection to the type of work that you're doing. It could come in change in your emotional response or mental response to the work that you do and or the people that are around you while you're doing it. It could come in different various forms, but it is a disturbance to multiple areas in your life. It can also present as anxiety. It can present as depression. It can present in multiple different ways, but it's definitely a shift or a major shift in your mental, emotional, and or physical well-being.
Hmm. I don't know. It makes me think about burnout.
Yeah.
Um, Burnout happens for a lot of different reasons for people, but I remember experiencing that and feeling stuck in that and still having to move through life and convince myself that this was okay because at the end of the day, if you're in it, you don't want to just be miserable in it, but it was just it was just draining. I don't know.
Yeah.
So when you say that it affects your mood, it affects your almost like peace of mind, your emotional state. I'm like, oh my goodness, maybe I was experiencing some workplace trauma back then. I'm not in that place anymore, thank goodness, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely remember feeling that and just being like, what am I going to do? Because this is how I pay my bills, this is how I take care of my
Right.
family, but I can't see myself being here forever. I'm so, just not happy with this.
Yeah. And sometimes, we can normalize it because we look at it in a in a perspective of, well, I need this, like you said, to pay my bills. This is my livelihood. If I don't do this, then what am I going to do? And with that normalization, we don't realize how much it's actually costing us. We are putting
Right.
our mental well being, our emotional well being up for grabs because we want to do something or continue to do something that seems like it's helping, but it's actually coming at cost. That sometimes is
Yes.
just too much or too high to pay.
Yep.
So, burnout is very important for us to recognize and to not normalize it or to kind of write it off to say it's a part of the job. It's what I have to do. If I don't do it, then who will? Those are some of the terms that we normally use to justify what we feel, but we
Mm,
don't really take the time to slow down and really examine how much it's costing us to be present for things that we really aren't present for anymore.
yeah, I really love how you explained that. Even explaining, the cost. I like that example. Like it's too expensive, right? It's for my just
Yeah,
my life, my emotional health, and like trauma. Like we talk about, workplace trauma. Trauma and stress are like so linked. They have such a close relationship, and we know the cost of stress, especially chronic stress, prolonged stress, and so hearing, how sometimes people are normalizing that kind of trauma and just carrying that stress around, it is literally subtracting years off your life if you don't know
right,
that. We're adding long-term debilitating health conditions in your future. And so be really careful about normalizing trauma, deep stress, things that are going to just sit on you, but also kind of pull at your emotional health constantly. That is so important. Sis, can you tell us about a personal experience where you have seen work trauma significantly impact someone's life or even your life?
absolutely. So for me, fresh out of college, fresh from graduating in college and my first corporate experience, I worked for an organization that shall remain nameless for about 12 years. Within the time period that I worked there, it was a shift in leadership. And with
Hmm.
that shift came a lot of variations of
Yeah.
disturbances, right? And it was one of those things where it became a very hostile and toxic work environment. I began to have panic attacks before going to work. I felt as though I was in this sense of depression because it was one of those things where I was trying to adapt to my surroundings in order to survive the surroundings, right? So
Right.
I started transforming myself into something that could be able to take or balance what it was that I was operating in without
Hmm.
realizing that it was costing the authenticity of who it was that I really
Mm.
was. So I prolonged my time with staying at this particular organization because of things that you mentioned already. Because, okay, I have a family that I have to provide for. I need insurance, right? I need
Yeah.
all of these different things that this job is giving me. And I can't sacrifice that just because it doesn't make me feel good, right? And so it got to a point where I started to gain a lot of weight. I started having a lot of anxious thoughts. Like I said, panic attacks. It would be moments where before going to work, I would just cry because of the type of environment that I was within. It was super toxic. It was one of those places where if you made one wrong mistake, you were chastised and you can't do anything and you're judged for it. It
Wow.
wasn't a very safe environment emotionally as well as mentally. So it wasn't until I decided to do something different that I decided to get better, or I was able to get better, removing myself from that environment and allowing myself to change and shift my perspective. Like, this can't be what it is that my higher being and my faith and my beliefs
Mhm.
intended me to live, or the life that was intended for me to live. So it actually led me into the space of therapy and looking into becoming a therapist and what does it
Really?
mean to be a therapist. So that toxic work environment shifted me into a different direction that I wasn't even thinking about, that wasn't on my radar. And for me to get to a point where I allowed myself to be open to another perspective, and a different perspective is how I paved the way and pivoted into the lane of mental health.
Wow, I don't think I've ever known the journey and how you landed here. I just was like, yeah, we went to college and she became a therapist. And that's so I'm oh my gosh. I'm so glad you did find this path. I'm sure so many lives have been touched. I mean, I know how amazing of a person you are.
Thank
And
you.
love how you can, help people understand that when you're in that space, first of all, you worked hard to be in that space. So when you kind of trying to hold on to it, I get it, right? Like it's
Yeah,
like, I don't want to just throw this away. A lot of times it comes with good money and stability. And so we kind of want to like keep that. But I also like how you said I had to create a plan for myself to do something different. You didn't say, well, I worked hard for this, so this is it. You said, no, I'm going to go back to the drawing board. I'm realizing this is not it. And I can definitely testify to that because I'm not a person that feels like all young people know what they want to do forever.
right.
I'm still at a place where I'm like, I'm okay with evolving and accepting new things and keeping that door open for new ventures, new opportunities. I love what I do, but I am never the person that's just like, this is the only thing I'll do for the rest of my life, right? So I get that, and
Right.
I love that it's never too late. And you didn't just say, I don't like it, I'm out. And you spoke to your faith, you spoke to your belief. And I'm a person who operates in that too. And so I'm like, what is the lesson here? What does God want from me next? Kind
Hmm.
of making sure I'm in that space because sometimes when you're running from something or this is not good for you and you don't have kind of that clarity in your spirit, you can move from something that's not good to something else that's not good or even worse.
Right.
And so, yeah, when you were like, let me pause, let me just, really kind of have a moment of truth with myself, let me create a new path for myself. And it sounds like it's been rewarding because you're still
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah. And it was crazy too because I feel like the transition was divinely connected, right? The
Hmm.
experiences that I had from this 12-year workplace were things that I was, so to speak, called to be in positions to help navigate with other people. And
Yeah,
even with me going into this space, the intent wasn't to help other people feel the way that I don't want to feel because I feel like a lot of times too, that's at the depth of a lot of therapists, right? We
yeah,
want to help people feel something that we either didn't receive or we want people to feel because we don't feel it, right? That wasn't
right.
the reason or the transition that I went into this. It was divinely connected because even reading the description of my program just brought
Mm,
tears to my eyes, and it was an emotional and spiritual connection to what I was reading, right? And
yeah,
so I feel like I would have never went this path or this direction had I
that
not had the experience or the
you wouldn't.
motivation to say, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. At first, I tried to go into, I think, public administration. It's like, there's no connection here. What am I going to do with public
Yeah,
administration
yeah,
in the same environment, right? So, some
yeah.
type of way, I was led to this path and this lane, and it's been up ever since. I completely walked away from corporate America back in 2021. I also opened a private practice at that time too. So there was a lot of benefits, and I won't say that it was just a toxic situation that I need to do away with, but the things that I learned there and the things that I experienced there were necessary for this particular season of my
Yeah.
life. So, it is a time, place, and season for everything. And the fact that I was able to endure that part of my life and the things that I experienced there, and also recognizing when that season was over to
Mhm.
transition into what it is that I'm doing now is vitally important. And I think that's important even for people that are in toxic work environments. The longer
Yeah.
that you stay within those environments in a way that no longer serves your purpose, no longer serves who you are, no longer serves the connection that you have with it, you got to leave because you're
Leave.
you're allowing yourself to be tied to something that is out of season. And we know without a season, there's no fruit that can be able to be produced from there. So
Yeah.
it's time to move on so that you can be able to live the life that you actually deserve.
Curnesia, you are ministering today. Oh my gosh. That like connected with me so much. One thing I do appreciate, because I mentioned earlier, like I remember being there. I remember not like being happy with work. And one thing I like when I reference that today, I say, but I would do it again. I would do it again because there was so much growth and so much that came out of that that allowed me to be able to like, help people navigate that, to be able basically saying that sometimes your circumstance alone is not just the circumstance. You're not in
Right.
this just to suffer. You're not in this just to resent this part of your life. There is like purpose that can get developed out of there. There is a growth, like I said, there's lessons learned, and a lot of how we live life, we absolutely want to be able to grasp onto lessons learned in any experience. And so I always say, like, if I didn't go through that, if I didn't, navigate that path, I would not be as amazing as I am as an entrepreneur now because I wouldn't have had those experiences. I mean, I did some of everything back then and learned so many different kind of lessons and understood business in such a deep way.
Hmm.
So, I mean, there's still so much value in just kind of realizing. But I like that you also say, but don't stay. It's a
Yeah.
season. Understand that. When you start feeling like this is not for me, that is not, that's not just for no reason. Listen to that and do something with that. I
Right.
love that. And you mentioned organizational, like your leadership and just some of the toxic culture that they had created there. And so, how do you feel like organizational culture and leadership play in contributing to mitigating workplace trauma?
I think a lot of leaders are unaware of the actual power and influence that they have outside and beyond just work productivity, right? A lot of
That part.
leadership, they're focused on the product, what's the outcome of it, but they don't see that the influence of the what do you call it? Of the climate or temperature of the office is predicated on how they show up and what it is that they give, right? So if you are a leader that's driven by procrastination or anxiousness, right? You are projecting that onto your team. You're
Mm,
projecting that onto the workplace or the environment that your people are having to work or produce out of, right? And I think the
right.
fact that leaders don't do enough self evaluation to not only know how they lead, but also who they're leading, that creates this workplace that isn't a healthy or safe space. Because even though you may thrive as a person that is great under pressure and that
Yeah.
can be able to produce no matter what it is that you're facing, that doesn't mean that those are the people or the type of people that you're leading. And I think a
Mm,
sense of awareness for leadership to know what type of leader are you, as well as what type of people that you're leading, is vitally important to the workplace culture and climate. I feel that
yeah.
leadership is the thermometer, right? Like you are driving the temperature of the organization that you
Mhm.
are actually cultivating. And you can make and break what that looks like based off of your sense of awareness of who you lead as well as how you lead.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that message. Everything, starts from the top, and however the top is ran, however they think, whatever they're motivated by, just kind of moves down in levels. And so,
Right.
if the bottom looks chaotic and disorganized and disarray, all of that, that's not just by happenstance. There is something that is coming down the pipe that is contributing to that. And leadership, is a skill. I think sometimes we live in a culture where nepotism exists, and
Yes.
if people are getting into roles they're not ready for, or maybe even realize this is not for me, but don't want to leave because
Right.
whatever, right? And you guys, you questionable leaders, you are affecting lives.
Hey.
I think, yeah, I love that message about the self-work. It's so much self-work because just like with anything else, like leadership skills are a thing you want to continue to grow, continue to refine, continue to develop. You have people around you that are motivated in so many different ways, and what works for you, that's great. You understand that. that is not going to work for everybody else.
Right.
And just, being mean or just being dismissive or being um, negligent, all these different ways sometimes we can see in leadership respond to people. That doesn't help you get the results you want. And so,
Right.
um, and compassion and kindness is free, right? Like, so you don't have to you don't have to be mean just to get what you want,
Mhm. And
like they
one thing
said.
I want to also add something to what you said too. You were talking about how with leadership, well, what I heard even while you were talking was there's a sense of identity that's connected to leadership too, right? Like you said,
Yeah.
everybody's not meant to lead. Everybody is not a leader. But what I found is that most times in a lot of situations where there are toxic work environments, leadership is connecting what it is that they do to who they are. There's some sense of definition in the fact that because I am a project manager or I'm the chief of staff or I'm this or I'm that, then that means that I have to be this or I have to be that. And that particular role or that particular title becomes their identity, and there's no separation between the two. And I think that it is vitally important for leaders to separate who they are from what they do, because when you are mishing the two together, then there could be some type of downfall that can come when
Mhm.
you're not producing well or your team is not producing well. You're acclimating that to how it is that you view self. You feel that you're failing. You feel that because your team failed, you failed. And now you're projecting onto your team failure. You're
Right.
projecting on a leadership style to your team that presents as though your team is failing, when that's
Wow.
one vocal point of how you or one viewpoint of how you see or identify the experience that may be far from reality. So I think that's very important for leadership to know and to understand what you do is not all of who you are. What it is
Yeah.
that you are meant to serve or the role that you're playing doesn't define who you are. Because when you have that type of understanding or you believe that the two are in line with each other, your team begins to feel that. When you're in these performance reviews, right? You're telling them, oh, you don't have interpersonal skills, or you lack the identity that I need from you, and you need X, Y, and Z. They are going based off of these performance reviews to define themselves even outside of the workspace. That also
Yeah.
adds into a toxic work environment, right? And work trauma. So separating this sense and definition of self with what it is that you do is vitally important for people, and especially leaders, to know who you are outside of just that title and that role that you play for 8 hours out of the day.
Oh my gosh. I feel like there is so much so much wisdom in that, which is just explained, and how applicable it is to like almost, I would say, any adult, right? When you carry that, like, I feel like you explained it so well, where you kind of clearly separate out your identity, right? Your individual identity with a role that you're playing or a hat that you wear. When you connect those and you merge those too much, they end up blurring into other areas of your life. And you want to be clear on that you have identity in multiple ways, so that you can give each identity or that role or that hat you're wearing its dedicated attention, but understand that there are other hats, there are other areas in your life you
Yes.
function in, right? I'm not bringing the kick it back, go to brunch with my girlfriends and have some mimosas version of me to therapy, because that's not, the access point I want to, show up as. But
Right.
also, there are times where I just want to be a mom. I just want to hug on kids and watch Disney movies, and I don't care about business in those moments. And so, like, I like that. I like that a lot. Being able to understand and separate out your identity so that you're not blurring, almost kind of projecting all of
Yes.
these skewed versions of yourself into work environments, into your relationships, into your parenting, into just who you are, your hobbies, all of the things you like to do or are trying to figure out how to do. It ends up being a slippery slope. You explained that very well. And even thinking about how leaders can do that, in your expertise, is there a significant experience or particularly traumatic experience that influence self-awareness and self-identity that you can speak on?
Yeah, let's see. Ask the question one more time.
So thinking about like how the leaders, right, are bringing sometimes these skewed versions of themselves where they are projecting, oh, if this isn't doing well, then now this is affecting everything and how I function. Consider how they're bringing that version of themselves sometimes to their teams, to their environments, their environments. How do you feel that work experiences, particularly those traumatic ones, influence our self-awareness and our self-identity?
I think out of pure survival mode, we tend to adapt to our surroundings, right? And that
Mhm.
takes us away from who we are, the authenticity of who we are, and our sense of awareness of what that is, right? And so a lot of people tend to use this saying, well, I can compartmentalize. If I had money for the amount of times that I have heard that in therapy, right? I can
Yeah,
compartmentalize. Like, I understand, right, that this is work and this is home, and I can just compartmentalize. But what do you do
it doesn't
when
work like
those
that.
compartments are just
Yeah,
overflooding, right?
yeah,
They start to spew and spill into other areas of your life. It is very
right.
challenging to spend majority of your day out of those 24 hours of your day for most, and for some, I won't even say most because I don't know, but for some, majority of your day is around people that you work with, around
Mhm,
people that you didn't have the opportunity to choose as coworkers, right? And so for you
mhm.
to spend majority of your day around people that have possibly created this sense of toxic work environments, it's impossible for you to easily and continuously turn that on and off to where it becomes regular and you can keep the two separated in a way that's healthy or in a way that allows so much space for self-awareness or self-identity,
Yeah,
right? So I believe that in order for us to be able to create this authentic sense of self-awareness as well as self-identity is to stay connected to the people that are embedded and rooted and grounded in what those things are, to be
yeah,
able to know those people, that community of people who know you for you, who are
right.
emotionally safe, right? Who are also mentally safe. They add to and influence the productivity of a safe and healthy sense of awareness as well as identity. Right. I think another
Yeah,
thing too is to take some time to like slow down your day to be able to recognize what is it that I'm experiencing and how do I experience it? Like really slowing down your day and allowing
yeah,
yourself to reconnect to what it is that these environments or this work trauma is causing you to separate yourself or be disconnected from because there's no space or capacity for it to exist in that environment. I hope that
yeah,
answers your question.
yeah, absolutely. Earlier you said part of why you were unhappy and you were experiencing some of that work trauma, you did make that shift in your career was not feeling like you were authentic to who you were in that environment and also seeing yourself shift from that.
Yeah,
I think sometimes when people are in an environment that they recognize are not probably great for them and they have just kind of accepted this as, well, that's just work, may could understand a little better that the way we carry things, like we're a lot more emotionally vulnerable than you may realize. And so the things that we are exposed to, the things that we are that is kind of being introduced to our psyche, into our thoughts, into our emotional space, those things don't just go away just because we're like, okay, I clocked out and I can go home now, and then that's it. And if you are not, in a place of peace, this is not aligned with who you are in some way, you're not on track with your purpose in some way, that comes out. It comes out in
right.
different ways, whether you're conscious or not. And so I thought that was a huge point to make about, yes, we don't choose our environments, but are we aligned authentically with who we are, with what we're doing? because we're going to have to carry whatever comes out of that and know how to handle, release, process, cope with that space. That is a literal big chunk of our days in
Right.
our life now. So thank you so much for sharing that. That was that made me think, oh, wait a minute.
And let me just add this too. Like, going back to my experience, just being able to share this, like, even my child was picking up on my association with work during COVID. Of course, most people were
Yeah.
working from home. And when I was in corporate,
Hmm.
it got to a point where my son even started to identify my relationship with work. There would be times where he would just walk up to me and close my computer and take me from my chair that I worked in and take me to the sofa to watch Sesame Street with him. It was almost like he was picking up the fact that, Mom, you don't like this. I don't like it either. Let's just go watch Sesame Street, right? I think he may have been about
Yeah.
1 or 2, but he just even associated with the fact that this wasn't a space that makes me happy. And I think we don't realize how our loved ones and the people that are around
Hmm.
us, even though we're ignoring how it presents to us or how it makes us feel, they're recognizing and seeing things on the outside or externally that we are privy to because we're in it and we're
Yeah.
trying to survive it. So I think even being more aware and cognizant of what the experiences are for the people that are around you and how it influences them to see you be influenced by something that's negative is also vitally important. And it takes us,
Hmm.
get ourselves out of or outside of what it is that we're experiencing to be available for that perspective as well. Because one thing about it, even though we can train our brains and our minds to not think about it or to not be present for it, our bodies never stop responding to the stress and the trauma that we
Yep.
experience. So,
Yep. Yep, you are so right. Oh my gosh. Oh, shout out to the baby. He was like, Mom, I'm gonna
right.
take care of you. And yes, I always tell people like even if you got a sit down job and you don't have to be running around all day, your body still is taking that stress and holding it until you find a way to get it
Right.
out. And so please understand, like, I mean, stress is natural, but chronic, prolonged, no plan to get it out, that's not healthy for
Mhm.
you. So absolutely. And I love like the direction this conversation is going in because workplace trauma and self-identity have such a very intimate relationship. Most of our lives, right? We're kind of taught and molded to do things a certain way. And we go to school. We told we go to school, or if we're homeschool, you're whatever that pattern is. You're on track for that. Sometimes we're put in different activities or extracurricular things. We're told to work at a certain point. Some people are told to go to college, and a lot of that is okay, but it doesn't mean what you're doing is connecting with at the core who you are. And I do feel like there's a point in your life where you meet this wall and you have an opportunity to transform self identity. And so, can you share with us a time in your life, big time in your life, a real time in your life that led to a deeper understanding and transformation of your self identity?
Absolutely. So, while I was working this corporate job, I had a lot of like transitions to happen all at one time. I was engaged, planning a wedding in Mexico. Immediately after that, I got pregnant with my son. I was going back to school, seeing clients, doing coursework, all of these different things, right? And it was one of those things where, despite the fact that I know mentally I am responsible for all of these things, I was trying to show up 100% for everything, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to be the best mom, the best wife, the best worker, the best therapist. Like, I'm trying to show up 100% to all of these different things. And it led me to severe burnout. And it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until I was able to see my own therapist for me to realize, hey, sis, we don't have to be 100% of everything to everybody and everything that's in your life.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes you to focus on that main thing or that main thing to lead you to those other areas.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're able to just show up as your best self and understand what that is and navigate how you wish to define that right now, that can lead to an automatic way of you being the best version of yourself in all these other areas. So it took me to see my own
Right.
therapist, for me to slow my life down, for me to realize and make sense of what was actually happening in it, and for me to also understand, okay, this is where I want to be. This is not where I want to be. Even though I like this, life has changed. I have new direction now. I like this. So for me, getting reconnected to myself and my own self identity took me to slow things down with a therapist, and for me to see what's vitally important for this stage of my life and how can I allow the importance of that and me showing up 100% for just this, for that
Mhm.
to allow space and create room for those other areas to get what they needed in an authentic way.
Yes. Wow, that's so powerful. I am definitely big on dismantling the belief that we are supposed to hold all of these balls up in the air or
Yeah.
carry all of these things at one time. And reframing that into, well, let's sit some of those balls down and just hold this one, because while we have several different, like, in your case, where you're a mom, your wife, you're a business owner, your daughter, your sister, all these different
Mhm.
things, that all of the things, right? You have all of these things going on. You cannot be all of those things at once, but all of those things do serve as a priority point at some point. And so when, I'm in mom mode, I'm 100% in mom mode. I don't want to be checking my phone. I don't want to be trying to think about, what I'm gonna be doing next weekend. I don't want to be right. I want to be able to give myself fully and be fully present in that moment. And so those other things, while very important right now, are not the priority. When I am not in my mode, something else is the priority, and I can be able to put all of my attention in that space. And so it's
Mhm.
almost like, let's put some of these things on the shelf, and knowing that they are there, and when we need to pick them up, we will, and that they are going to get picked up. 'Cause I also, I'm not necessarily saying, oh, well, this is more important than this. Obviously, if you're wearing all of these hats, they're all important to you,
Right.
but they don't all need your attention at once. You cannot be 100% to 6 different things. You can't
Right.
be 100% to 2 different things. So
Right.
being aware, right, of how to prioritize all of these different things, and also making sure you're in there. 'Cause I hear that message. I hear that message of, make sure you're a part of the priorities, make sure you're giving
Yes.
some of that 100% to yourself. One thing I like to do is put my self-care time. Well, I realize I don't like working 5 straight days a week, or if I do, I have to reorganize how I do it, whether it's some days are short hours, some
Mm.
days are long hours. And when I take off time, I actually do more of the middle of the week. Every week, I do middle of the week type stuff. And I was like, I hear everybody, saying, "Oh, I got Friday off, and then I have these 3-day weekends, and it sounds really good." And I haven't done that in years. I haven't said I'm gonna have my work week stop at Thursday or something. And the reason why is because I actually need complete alone time sometime, very
Yes.
regularly, like, at least once a week, or once every 2 weeks. And the weekend is not when I'm gonna get that. The weekend is when my kids are home. And if we go anywhere, even if I went by myself, most of the people around me are off work. So it's more crowded. And
Mhm.
so I actually cherish the middle of the week breaks, because I actually truly do get that self-care, that time alone, that quiet, that peace I need. And it is not selfish.
Right.
um,
Right.
so I know that you're really, really big on just advocating for people to have self identity, self awareness, being able to nourish and grow yourself in this way. How can individuals strengthen and nurture their self identity, especially in challenging or changing environments?
Yeah, I would definitely say for you to slow things down, like we were just talking about, and having some sense of accountability to what that looks like. Whether I would highly recommend a therapist to be able to do that. But, if that isn't yet an option for people, I would definitely say to get someone who is trustworthy to be able to sit in that space and hold you accountable for it, and for us to not feel like it is our responsibility to navigate life and the things that life has to offer alone. So, reconnecting to self by slowing down the pace, being able to really
Mhm.
say, okay, what is it that I'm really experiencing and how am I experiencing it? One exercise that I do with all of my clients, as well as myself, I do it too. At the end of the day, check in with myself. So, emotionally, mentally, overall, spiritually, all these different areas of life, right? I will
Mhm.
say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, where am I emotionally? And I will go through my day to see, okay, this played a part and how I ranked it. This is how I showed up for myself, where I didn't show up for myself emotionally. And I'll just slow down my day to be able to add perspective to what it is that I feel and how I can be able to influence or make it better for the next day. So slowing things
Yeah.
down, having some level of accountability from people who are emotionally and mentally safe to be able to hold that space with you, and also people that have the capacity to sit in that space with you, because everybody doesn't, and that's okay if they don't. Because we
Yeah.
also have the
Yeah.
option of therapy. Therapists always have the capacity, right? That's what we're
Yes.
here for. So, having people to hold you accountable to what that looks like, as well as a level of self accountability as well.
Wow. Yeah, giving yourself time to process, reflect.
Yeah.
It sounds like self-identity, the journey of self-identity also is a journey of vulnerability, where you say, like, don't feel like you gotta navigate this by yourself, and everybody is not gonna be able to sit with you in that, but be accountable and have people around you that allow you to be accountable to yourself, your journey, your growth. And that definitely, I'm like, vulnerability is huge because it allows you to tap into a deeper, sensitive, emotional space with
Hmm.
someone in a safe way and not carry that. And well, I always say, it's voluntary or involuntary what how you release things, but it's going to come out. And
Right.
so that the way you just explain, like being able to just kind of pause, slow down, end of the day, actually be intentional about reflecting on your day, processing the feelings that you took on that day, thinking about what you want for the next day is huge, and being able to choose how life can look for you. A lot of times people feel like life just happens to you and then you just hold on the handles. And that's not completely true. While yes, like change is inevitable, life is going to be full of surprises and all of that. You actually have some say so in that. You can,
Right.
if you know life is going to do this, like choose how you want to jump on the journey and how what you want to get out of it. And the people who are doing that are actually, getting those outcomes that they're wanting. And so I love that. You don't have to just be like, I'm just holding on to the day and then tomorrow I don't know. And then the next day is just whatever. Like it's just a surprise every day. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I also think it's vitally important too to know when it's time to make a shift or a change or take
Mhm.
action and what it is that you're observing every day. If your emotionality is always at a 1 or a 2, or if your mental
Yeah.
capacity is always at a 1 or a 2, right? Realizing
Yeah.
what those things are that add into or play a part in it being that way, and then deciding to take actions and steps behind what is necessary to shift or change that. And I think that's something that's vitally important, is the fact that a lot of people don't take the time to process and really see the perspective in what they're experiencing before they jump towards action. Not all the time, because you're
Mm.
recognizing something takes or requires action behind it, right? You may not
Yes.
have enough information yet to be able to jump into action before fully processing things. And
Yeah.
also, adding balance to that too, knowing when you have processed enough and you have processed on top of the process, to where now is action time. Like, it's a fine balance between the two that is vitally necessary, because going back to workplace trauma, if your workplace is creating this space for you to always be emotionally and mentally low, and you've pinpoint where that comes from or what that looks like and how you're experiencing it, then you have to decide, okay, now it may be time for me to take action.
Yeah.
Or if you have one bad day and you're like, I'm leaving. slow
Yep.
it
Yep.
down and
Exactly.
what it is that you're experiencing and how you are experiencing it and how you may be influencing what it is that you're experiencing as well. So I think it's a
Yeah.
fine balance and just processing and knowing how long to process and what that looks like is important. And if you can't do that, go to a professional that has been strategically trained with holding space for you to be able to do that properly.
Yeah, like us, you know. Wow. Yes. So, oh my gosh. What am I thinking? It's something that is right there in my brain. Come back to me. Sometimes things have not been revealed to you and you're feeling something, but you don't have the full picture. I'm hearing that.
Mhm.
Um, being able to be grounded in the spiritual place is going to help with this journey because whenever there's things that I'm just like, what is going on? Or even maybe I know what's going on, but it's a big change coming up. I really ask for peace and clarity before I do anything. Just to clear my spirit, just to feel, like I understand. And sometimes what ends up happening is so different than what maybe I thought was happening or what I thought I should do. And so I love that, just kind of being okay with pausing. I know, like, sometimes things happen in relationships or friendships where people are off, off center. They're not in sync. And people sometimes think that, well, I got to do something, right? I gotta either attack him, because I'm not happy with it, or I gotta do something. And I'm like, sometimes just let it be because we don't all the way know what's happening. And it's in the gray, right? It's not clear, it's not black, it's not white, it's not all, it's not nothing. But it's in this space that you're just like, it's a little foggy, it's a little murky. I really can't see exactly what's happening. That's okay.
Mhm.
A lot of what we're doing in life is going to be in the gray. And so I really like that message. I really feel like there are so many areas that applies to. There are so many ways to embrace that and be okay with that in the unknown,
Yeah.
right? I don't have to do anything. I'm a person who is about lean into your change. If you want something, do it. Da 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 da.
Mhm.
But I also want spiritual clarity when I do that. Because like I said, you could go from one situation or recognize something that you didn't understand and then it gets worse. I have an example now that I'm over here running my mouth. Um when I recently moved, we were, moving is always a little chaotic. I don't know. Like,
Mhm.
and I feel like I put a lot of great things in place. Had movers, the truck had clear dates, had the hotel the night before, like everything was in place. And I remember the day they were doing it, I parked, down the street because the driveway was occupied because of the moving truck. And then the neighbor, I never, I met the neighbors, it was moving day. And one of the neighbors asked me to move the car. And a part of me was like, this is public street parking. How you gonna ask me to move the car? And so, but I didn't say anything. I just was like, okay, I'll go ahead and move the car. Obviously, well, first of all, I don't like to start off on the wrong foot with nobody. So I'm like, if she need me to move the car, I'll move the car. But there was a part of me that was just like, what is that? Why did that happen? Because I've never actually experienced somebody asking you to move from an open public area.
Right.
As for again, I'm like, don't do nothing. I didn't have to ask her. I didn't have to challenge her. I just was like, I don't lose from moving this car. There is no setback for me personally from moving this car. I just moved it. So, fast forward, I'm gonna say the next day or 2 days later. I don't know. It was not the same day. I saw her. I don't know, like in passing or something, and she came and introduced herself to me, and we talked for a minute. And she explained to me how she's a doctor and she just had a baby and just small talk. And she actually said, I don't know how to park. I don't know how to reverse. I don't know how to back up. And I didn't know that, I'm like, she got a car that has reverse. But she said, I don't know how to, like, I kind of feel unsafe when I back up. I don't know what I'm doing. And, and then I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's why she needed me to move the car." She pulls up into her space. She don't have to adjust. And the way the space is positioned is right off the driveway. So
Mhm.
there's nothing behind it. She literally pulls up and stop. And then she pulls out when
Absolutely.
she goes. And then I was like, okay, obviously understanding, compassion, all of that. It's like, wow. And it was maybe even like a month later or something that I saw a dent in her car that looked like, she had an accident before or something happened before. And so I was so glad that I didn't have any reaction. I just let that little moment of emotion or disruption settle and just not feel like I had to do something with that. Because like I said, when you're in your spirit, just like, okay, I just want the peace and clarity. You don't have to react. It will reveal itself. And
Right.
sometimes in the moment when you're going through that, it hasn't revealed itself yet. So that's okay. Just wait. It's gonna be fine.
Right. And I
And
think go ahead, I'm sorry.
oh no, I was just gonna say it just allowed us to have an even better start because of, just being understanding, being open and listening and receiving her.
Right, right, absolutely. And I think sometimes too, we're in such a rush to not feel the emotion because of fear of what that emotion could be or how it
Hmm.
may present, that we try to rush and do something about it, or we try to
Yeah.
move into the action of what that is rather than gaining understanding and clarity. And it sounds like, with your experience, even while you were doing it, you kind of slowed down and was like, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to do this and take time to process it like you did. And I'm glad you did do that, because later on you were able to gain clarity and understanding, not just with the situation, but it sounds like too, you were even able to gain more clarity with yourself to say, you know what? I didn't jump to the conclusion as to why this happened or why she wanted me to move it and all this different kind of stuff. Like, I was able to slow it down and I did what was needed and I got the understanding and clarity that I needed on the back end. But my
Yeah.
immediate response was for me to just do what was and for me to go about my day and to not let that isolated situation be something that disrupted what it was that I had already had in motion. So I think that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you. You just nail on the head. That was perfect. I like that. I like how you package that up for me. That's what we do for our clients, by the way. That's
We
why we
do.
don't understand that. You just go ahead and go up there because I
Right.
promise you it's gonna change your life. What is speaking of that, right? Because that's that like I feel like those like some of that process is a part of self-care, right? Thinking about how you are like the questions you're asking yourself, the intentionality behind trying to understand yourself, trying to improve, trying to feel better, all of these different things. So what would you say is emotional self-care and why is it important when somebody is dealing with workplace trauma?
Okay. All right. So I would say that emotional self care is taking the necessary steps that's needed to have healthy emotionality, right?
Mm,
Um, I think a lot of times we look at self care, like I said before, as action based. We have to do something rather than be something, rather than understand what it is that we're actually feeling. We decide to jump immediately into action when sometimes the purpose of what you're feeling is for you to recognize it and to actually allow it to move through you and to know what it is in the first place. So there is emotional self care, but even adding
mhm.
to that, before you get to the emotional self care, emotional intelligence, right? So understand, what are your emotions? How are your emotions present? How are you presenting those things, right? Understanding more of what your emotions are saying. We start with emotional intelligence and then we move into emotional self care. How do we take care of what it is that we understand
Yeah.
emotionally? How do we add to what it is that we need emotionally for us to be present and to not be driven by those emotions, right? I like to tell
Yeah.
clients that emotions are like car signals, right? When your check engine light is on or when your low
Mm,
fuel light is on. Those are
I like
signals
that.
to let you know what it is that's actually happening within your body. Does
Hmm.
it mean that because that light is on, you have no gas? No. It's just giving you a warning and it's letting you know, hey, we're getting
Yeah.
low
Go this
down
one.
here. And once you realize that that's what's happening, then you can take action towards going to fill up your tank, right? But I think that's
Exactly.
the thing that ties into that emotional self-care, knowing what it is that you need emotionally without a forced action to follow it is how we're
Yeah.
able to be present for ourselves. And when we understand that, we can take that into places that are toxic. We can take that with what we're experiencing through work trauma to know what's being created in that environment and also what we're creating for ourselves. What's
Yeah.
reality versus what the trauma and our response to that trauma is, right?
Yeah.
So I think that emotional self-care creates this degree of separation, right? From what we're experiencing and what's projected onto us versus what it is that we actually need from the experiences that we'll receive.
If I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like emotional self-care might be kind of the overall goal in self-care.
Yeah.
When you break down that it is not about the actions, it's about the being. A lot of like, even when I think about what am I doing, what am I trying to accomplish with self-care, it's an emotional recharge. It's an emotional boost. It's a release in some ways, a balance that I'm seeking, some
Hmm.
sort of peace. And so I love the example about the check engine light and the gas light because the check engine light is kind of saying, hey, something may be, something may need some attention, some repair, whatever, right? Don't ignore this. Go ahead and go ahead and treat this, and the gas is kind of saying you're draining out. Like, hey,
Hmm.
you're almost empty. You need to refuel. You need to pour back into yourself. And so that is, I'm gonna use that as an example. And even it connects to what you were saying earlier about being aware of like what is kind of contributing to our lower emotional state. Trying to find that because sometimes it could be the people around you, like you may not have the boundaries you need to have in place to feel at a certain emotional balance. So where like, dang, every time I get away from that person, I am like, stressed out, I'm drained, I feel like a little rattled, all of this different stuff. Or it
Yeah.
can be certain environments to just kind of the testament of this episode where we're talking more about workplace trauma. You're not meant to stay in that kind of space. There may be something you're gaining, learning, moving toward, but accepting that is not healthy for you. And so if you notice that I'm always kind of ending up at the bottom and not feeling great, find out what that is so you
Right.
can start to like work on eliminating that and changing that for yourself. Um, but what are some practical strategies that you recommend in just being able to build your emotional self-care or adjust your daily routine?
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, definitely those check-ins, right? Checking in with yourself, allowing yourself to slow down your day and slow down your experiences is definitely one that I would recommend. Another one would be to connect with a therapist. Getting more clarity and understanding of how you even view emotions. How do you
Okay.
experience them? What are your thoughts and perceptions of emotions? Do you need to change your perspective on how you view emotions? Do you see them as a positive or a negative? Like all of these different things are things that can be explored with a therapist. Also, another strategy that I would say is to stay connected with people that reflect
Mhm.
where it is that you want to be and what it is that you want to feel, and that can help you
Mhm.
to identify with the authentic version of yourself. If you have a group of friends who know you and you feel like they know the true identity of who you are and not who you were, and it's not
Okay.
about going back or chasing a version of yourself that you used to be, but with all of your experiences and everything that adds to who you are today and now, those particular people or those friends that can be able to identify with that and keep you in that space and push you forward into what that looks like, definitely keep that connection with them. Having them to serve as accountability partners, like having
Yeah.
people that can support where it is that you are and where it is that you're going.
Yes. Wow. That's powerful. I absolutely love that. We do not have to stay in the cycle of just this is it, these are the only people attracting to what you want, attracting to what you aspire for, allowing yourself to learn and grow from new experiences and being exposed to new things is not necessarily, like we said, abandoning the past. It's just really kind of like, who are we today? Where are we
Yeah.
headed? And there are some people that is going to be right there along the way. There are some people that they were in that chapter. They're not going to be in this chapter. There are some people that's going to come along and where you're headed. So being open to that and not feeling guilty or bad because things are changing, that is the part of the journey.
Yes.
And so love that, love that, love that. Thank you so much for just sharing so much wisdom today. I feel like this is an amazing, just conversation topic to dive into for so many reasons. Like, obviously, we focused some on workplace trauma, but if you kind of listen to the writing on the wall or reading between the lines, a lot of this message applies to other areas of your life in so many different ways. Curnesia, can you please share with the people how can they find you? How can they reach you if they are trying to work with you or more, all of the above?
All right. So my information, I am C Bogans MFT. That is CBOGANS MFT. On all social media platforms, and by all I mean the main ones that are fellow millennials. So I would say Instagram, TikTok, as well as possibly Facebook. I am on those social media platforms. I would love to connect with you guys. Also, you can visit my website, which is www.cbogans.com. I will be accepting new clients for therapy as well as coaching in the fall. So connect
Nice.
with me there. I also have a few workshop and intensives that are coming up specifically for corporate women, women that are in corporate America and that are experiencing stress. How do you navigate through stress? What are the different pressure points of stress? How can you be able to advocate for yourself from the perspective of balancing your work life?
Um,
So we have those things coming up in the winter. So stick around and connect with me and be sure to get more information on that as it becomes available.
Yes, thank you. Yes, you guys heard it first. So make sure y'all sign up. By the time this episode is public, you guys will be really close to that. So I'm excited to see what happens from that. Again, thank you all for joining in today. I am very interested in hearing your feedback. Please do me a favor and share this, like it, subscribe, all of the above. This is life stuff. And so this is something that can apply to anybody in any situation. And I hope that this is helping someone. Thank y'all again for joining the Bianca Williams podcast. Our wonderful guest, Curnesia. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, and we will see y'all later.